Everyone's going to think you're on the road, because every now and then the camera does this. Like, what is going on?
Yeah, no, I'm in the, just for context for anyone watching this, I'm in the camper van. The house is an absolute bomb site from the renovation. I just wanted a bit of peace and quiet. So if my camera does move, it's because I'm moving. But I am trying to hold it still as we talk.
Not traveling anywhere. You're not driving whilst filming. So that's we should get that out of the way.
No, on my driveway.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. How did you get into science fiction and fantasy? Did you read it growing up, like a lot of people started?
Yeah, absolutely. So like most of us, I was probably about 7, 8 when I really first started to read, and I started with Enid Blyton,
Right.
the Magic Faraway Tree, the Enchanted Wood, and I loved this portal fantasy that she set up. And in my summer holidays, I used to go and spend all my time with my grandparents, who would take me to the library, and I was just a voracious reader. I always have been. So I would check out the maximum amount of books I could.
Same.
Yeah, it moved on to like John Christopher's Tripods trilogy, which was like such a nostalgic sci-fi for me when I was about 10 or 11 when I first read that. And then I moved on to Tolkien, Eddings, Howl's Moving Castle, and it just built and built and built. And I've always loved science fiction and fantasy. It is that magic. It's been able to just go to a different world, and sort of let your imagination run wild. So it's kind of just built from a very, very young age. And my mum and dad used to be, they are huge science fiction and fantasy nerds.
Really? So, interesting.
Yeah, so I grew up watching, as you do, all the old 70s and 80s shows, but Babylon 5 was a massive one in our house.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Huge influence on me and my work. Yeah. And
brilliant. I used to always want to be like a Psi and have a really high Psi rating.
What's your P rating?
Cool. Their P rating, like really cool. And then it was all Star Trek and Star Wars, and yeah, they were good. And I think I've said before to some of my friends, they were very relaxed with ratings of things. So I was really young when I watched Highlander and Terminator and all of these proper, and Aliens, and it all just sort of embedded, I think, and sort of cemented this love of anything that wasn't on Earth or wasn't in the real world, contemporary real world, and I was happy. So yeah, kind of grew from there.
Well, when did you think about, I actually want to start writing myself? Because a lot of people don't. Well, some start when they're very young, and I think I wrote some stories when I was a kid, but I didn't actually properly start trying to write a novel till I was very late teens, early 20s. And I thought, I can do this. I'll have a go. It's easy, So
I was really young as well. I was at primary school and I wrote my very first story, and that was, God blimey, when was that? That was early 90s when I finished primary school. So it was a slightly different ethos as it was then, but there was a creative writing cup for the best stories, and I had my eyes set on that from like day one. I was which I did. And it was kind of like, I thought, clearly I can write good stories, maybe not grammatically correct at 10 or 11 years of age, but enough that adults liked them. But I didn't really do much with it until my early 20s. So I sort of went to secondary school, finished that, college, work, and I wrote my first novel, which was In Search of Gods and Heroes. It was quite cathartic, as I was sort of mourning my grandmother, my nanny. Right. And it was there was an old website called Autonomy, which
I used to be on that.
Yeah, so it's on Collins, and I uploaded my novel, and it did really well through the rankings. So I thought, maybe it's all right. So I met an editor friend there who edited it. I submitted it through to a publisher that's within our genre, and it made it to the table, but it subsequently wasn't picked up. And
what genre was the novel then?
Fantasy.
It was fantasy, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's a publisher that's still going today, and I don't mind saying it was Angry Robot back in the day when they had more submissions. So it made it to the table, but they eventually passed on it because it clearly didn't fit. But it it is more YA than adult, although the themes are sort of there. And it was then when I thought, well, maybe I should publish this myself. So I did. I wrote Anna slightly afterwards, shelved everything for about 7-8 years of writing because I focused on my job. Focused on my job, focused on Grimbold Books, and then just dabbled in a few short stories here and there because I just didn't have the time, or as everybody likes to say, the spoons to be able to spread my time across everything. And it was sort of when are we now? 2021. So it was late 2019 when a friend of mine who was working for Rebellion at the time said they're looking for a dystopian that could be sort of seen as the UK's Handmaid's Tale, something a little bit edgier, something with a bit of grit to it, not your mainstream dystopia. She goes, what about Anna? Because she'd read it in the past. I went, do you think? And she went, there's no harm. So I submitted it through to them, and I didn't hear anything, as you do for months. So you kind of write it off and you think, it's probably not best if I ask my mate, because then I don't want to put her in an awkward place as to where, where it is. I don't want her to go, yeah, sorry, Sam, they've passed on it. So I kind of just left it. But I was packing up to move in February last year, and I got this email pop through, and it sort of said submission Anna at the top, and I thought, oh, it's going to be a decline. I'll just leave it. But it was later that day, after I'd packed up 101 boxes, that I thought I'd sit down, have a look at my emails, and then I did a little dance of joy and the usual that we do when a publishing contract comes through. So clearly something about it resonated with Rebellion, and here we are with Anna on the shelves.
So the interesting thing is, you wrote it and then just kind of sat on it for years, and just it's been sat there for probably 10 years now. It's been
very close to it. I finished it in 2013. So it took 3 months to write, and I wrote religiously. I wrote 2,000 words a day, religiously. Then I left it, and I tried submitting it to agents, and I met with some agents in London who really enjoyed it, but ultimately it was a no, and the declines were really, really good. They were very promising, and a lot of them were very honest, and they said, we don't know how to pitch this, because, and I'll explain sort of the themes and what the book's about, but they didn't feel that it was something that they could potentially sell. So I appreciate and I understand that, and this is a business. In the end of the day, this is a business world that we're working in. They may be our babies and they may be our creations, but they have to make money. So I completely understood and appreciated that, but I just did not know what I wanted to do with this book, so I put it in that metaphorical drawer, and left it there. And it was, I suppose, chance and luck that has put me where I am, because I don't have an agent, and it's an unusual situation to be in, not to have an agent but to have a publishing deal.
Before we get into the book, let's talk about that thing, because whenever I've done a lot of interviews, a lot of authors, I've met many over the years, and the usual process is, you write a book, you send it out to agents, and if you get rejected, you either go on to the next one or you look at some kind of self-publishing. But you sent it, did they have an open door policy at that time? Did Rebellion sort of, or is it because your friend said this is what they're sort of looking for, you could send it in?
I think it was the latter. Right. I think it was the latter. So I did just sort of a caveat there, because all of us writers, we have these imposter syndromes and feelings that we're not that good enough. And it was only a few weeks ago, actually, I asked her, I said, when it came to submitting my book, did other people read it? And she said, yes, they did. It wasn't just her decision as to what would be published. And that's quite a validating feeling, because you always feel that, or I felt that I was only where I was because of my friend. It was that whole, is it actually good enough? Or was it, just wink, wink, nudge, nudge because my mate works there, sort of thing. But, that was a really nice feeling to know that other people had read it, and that they were in agreement with what it is. So yeah, I think it was luck. And it, you know, it was very fortuitous. And one thing I will say about Rebellion is they are absolutely fantastic. They are focused on their authors. They're focused on being equal and fair, and you know, they were very aware that I didn't have an agent, and so they were aware that agents negotiate contracts. So the way that I was dealt with was very transparent. You know, I won't go into the ins and outs of it, but but from day one I was totally impressed with how I was treated, and you know, they didn't try to pull wool over my eyes. They were just really good.
Did they encourage you to get an agent, or did they just sort of say it's up to you whether, if you feel you want to get one, to look at the contract?
Absolutely. And yeah, the latter as well there. Yeah. You know, I like I said, I'd kind of been through the agent process with it. Okay, it'd been years before, but I'd been through the agent process with it, and it hadn't resonated with anyone because of my sort of side job with Grimbold Books. Obviously I offer contracts out to authors, and I publish them on a micro scale compared to Rebellion and above. So I had a good working knowledge of publishing contracts. So I knew sort of what to look for and what to negotiate on. And so we were able to negotiate, and we were able to come to something that was obviously great for both of us. So yeah, I was really happy with the end result. I mean, you know, I'm not going to lie, I'd love an agent. Who wouldn't? Because it is that final rubber stamp of validation. But you know, we'll just have to see how Anna goes and see if there's anything else that maybe sparks their interest.
I guess you're in quite a unique position in the fact that you've had, as you said, you have experience of contracts and publishing, and most authors don't know any of that kind of thing. And I mean, the only thing I can compare it to is when I went to France, and I went to a festival and I spoke to authors there. They don't have agents in France.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so I was talking to a couple of authors and said, no, we do all our contracts. And the rest of them said, so what about an agent? So we don't have them. I deal directly with the publisher. I deal the contract. I thought, wow, that's an extra lot of pressure that they have to kind of learn, whereas you had that knowledge already from having run, you know, Grimbold. I think it's, you know, agents can be helpful, I guess, in this circumstances. Yeah, they could look at international sales and all that kind of negotiating contracts and things. But in terms of UK, if you've already got the knowledge, you know.
And that's it. So I've had, they keep going to Rebellion and being bounced to me, but I've had foreign rights interest and media interest and all sorts, and everyone's got, and all these emails say, can you direct me to your agent? No, I can't actually. I can help you myself, but I haven't got that agent. So you know, it is what it is. We'll just have to see what comes out of it. I
think you'd probably get one now at this point. The fact that the book's out and you're getting lots of interest from other places, I think an agent would be interested at this point to kind of talk to you. So
yeah. Well, if anyone watching, you know,
everyone's get in touch. They're good. That's
it. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so I am in a unique position, but it is an unusual position, and it is one that sort of keeps you on your tenterhooks though, because you don't have the fallback of the agent. You kind of are hoping that whatever you're doing is right, in the marketing and the publicity and all sorts, and that, you know, when my next novel is done and I get to submit it, which I would try and submit to an agent, I'm hoping then that I've got enough behind me with Anna and everything else to get some interest, if the novel's a fit, clearly. So it is hard balancing these things. But, you know, I'm in an incredibly privileged position where I am, especially in today's market and climate. So, yeah.
Yeah. So the two hardest things is, one, getting published, and then two, staying in publishing and staying published and having books out there. That's the next challenge. People think, get the agent, get the book out, and I'm done. I'm like, well, no, there's a lot more to do after that. That's just the first huge hurdle, and then there's many more to come. It's an ongoing kind of marathon.
It is, and it's so funny the amount of people who aren't in the writing arena who, like friends or family, will go, "Oh, next J.K. Rowling." And I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that. You know, they go, "Oh, when are you going to give up the day job?"
Yes.
It's like, no, you know, and you have to then explain that tiny weeny percentage of people can do that. And when you break it down, all the figures to them, the shocked faces, and you're like, yep. It is incredibly hard to be a full-time writer. And those that do, fair play to them. They've got where they are through hard work, but don't think it's going to happen anytime soon.
It's a long slog. It's, building a career like anything else. Some people are able to do it, as in they can start writing full-time overnight, but even then they've still got to build a career. They don't make the career in one book. It's very few. There are very few Harper Lees out there of the kind that, have 2 books out in 50 years or something,
and then can live off the royalties. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, the rest of us keep putting books out. This is a long time alongside the day job and family and everything else.
Yeah, and that's where I am. So yeah, working full-time, running Grimbold, 2 little kids, renovating a house, converting a camper van. But writing has taken a massive backseat. Not through choice, but that's what life is, isn't it? It's putting your priorities first. And
there's a lot to juggle. This is it. It's all about juggling.
Absolutely, yeah.
So tell me about Anna. Tell me about where the book came from and a bit about it as well.
Brilliant, thank you. So I work as a detective in the UK police, so I specialise in domestic and sexual abuse. So for context, I've been a police officer for 17 years, but I've spent 15 years as the DC within this arena. So domestic abuse is something that's quite close to my heart. I enjoy is the wrong word, but I take satisfaction in what I do.
Yeah.
And Anna it's a dystopian, but also a speculative novel in a near future England, and we follow the main character Anna. She's captured, and we deal with sexual abuse, physical abuse, and it's a story of her psychological journey, her PTSD thereafter, how she deals with what has happened to her in this world. And obviously I won't talk about too many spoilers. But it's on the back cover, so it's not going to spoil it.
If it's there, you can say
he catches back up with her, this abuser. So we learn about the cycle of coercive control, about narcissism, how our victims are isolated from friends and family, and it's told from a first person perspective, so it's quite a close narrative. And it has been polarizing. This isn't a novel that has twigged with everybody. It is either they absolutely get it and understand it, or that people absolutely hate it. There hasn't been a middle ground, which is great from an art point of view, because as everybody says, you don't want a meh book.
No.
You want something that evokes the emotions, and this certainly has done that. So I couldn't, when I first started writing it, I did start writing it as a dystopian revenge with a strong female character. But I felt it was playing into a bit of a trope. And I've done a lot of blog posts recently and sort of interviews with people, and I talk about sexual violence against women and sexual violence within our genre of science fiction and fantasy. And it's something that, if it's not there for a purpose, I personally loathe it. I don't like the trope of sexual violence for the sake of it, to create these characters that have no real purpose, but perhaps they're pushing along the narrative of your bad guy, or
provide agency for the hero to go out and do something by committing violence against a woman.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't, it's very rare for us to see the aftermath of sexual violence in our genre. We don't often see the survivor after the act, and if we are introduced to them, we're introduced to somebody who is a shell of their former self, or they become a parody of their pre-rape selves, or again they're just introduced as that weird one who's been raped. There's no real understanding of what sexual abuse is, or what physical violence is, and domestic abuse, what they can do. So I thought, let's write something within our genre. I'm calling it our genre, science fiction and fantasy. Let's write something in our genre that deals with this, because I could find some examples of childhood sexual trauma sort of coming into the fantasy arena, but I couldn't see anything that really fitted what I wanted to read, and ultimately this is what I wanted to read. I didn't write it for a market, I wrote it for me. Excuse me. And yeah, this is what we've got at the end of it. The first person narrative of Anna. Part 1 deals with her abuse, part 2 deals with her healing and trying to integrate into society, and part 3 deals with her resolution and accepting what's happened and how she's going to move forward. So it is broken down into 3 very distinct sections, with each with their own feel and pace and tone. And it's something that I'm proud of. I think, and I do refer to, I think I got one mainstream review that asked what the point of the novel was. And to me, the point was showing this cycle of PTSD. And if you miss the point, then, if you ask them what the point is, you've missed the point of it. And that's, that I can't control how readers view it.
No.
But, those that have read it and understood it, appreciate it for what it is. And I had, it went up on NetGalley, and I had a email come through from Rebellion, and they said, look, we don't normally send through to our authors the private comments that people make, but I think you need to see this. And somebody who I had no idea who it was whatsoever, and I still don't, was a survivor of sexual abuse and had written a really eloquent and beautiful letter to Rebellion for me, just saying thank you for what you've done, thank you for making me feel validated in a person. And that was just worth it. Just that one person that could read it and know that somebody else understood. So that was a really important moment for me. So with every crappy review that comes through, I find myself that, I get the ones where people really understand it. And if it helps just one person, then it's worth it. So
yeah, this is part of the difficulty, well, many of the difficulties being an author, but one of them is you can't respond to reviews, you can't say anything, and you can't control what baggage or what kind of a lens a person brings to when they read your book. So there's a little bit of a connection between your book and my new one, The Coward. There it is, that one. Because the main character suffers from PTSD. He's essentially a man it's a fantasy novel, but it's essentially a man who's gone to war and come back. And everyone thinks he's this great hero, and there's all the stories and the songs are all about him, but the reality is far different. And there again, I've had some reviews where people have said, oh, it's just this, it's just an adventure story. And I go, okay, if you've read that and that's all you've got from it, that's fine. If you're not seeing any of the nuance, I can't come and tell you, explain it to you. It's all there, it's all in the book, it's all in the page. But if you don't see it, then, that's unfortunate. But
yeah, and that's absolutely it. But it is really hard as an author, because even though I've got the experience with Grimbold, so of people's reviews and sort of sales and gushes and things, when it's your book, it's really difficult. And I've got this big tough exterior doing my day job, locking up high-risk domestic abuse perpetrators for attempted murders and rapes and all sorts. That is my level of investigation. But I'm very soft inside. So whenever you get a bad review, I just sit there and I'm like, I'm never going to write again. It really, really sort of still, even now, affects me. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You can't force the nuance, force the themes into a reader's sort of eyes. If they don't see it, they don't see it, and is what it is. But when you get that one reviewer who does get everything, it's just a beautiful feeling.
It makes it all worthwhile when someone goes, they actually get what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
It's one I get really defensive about some of my friends or who are authors who've got books out, and some people post kind of, oh, it's a bit this, and I'm like, you didn't see any of the stuff, and it annoys me so much that I want to get angry on their part, on their kind of and chip in and say, no, you should be doing this, and you can see this is obvious, and then just it's so frustrating.
It is really hard. It is that. Step back, breathe. Don't.
So frustrating.
Step away. Yeah, I know. I feel it as well. I really do. So it was, it was lovely sort of writing something that was quite cathartic.
I was going to ask about that.
So yeah, I mean, I want to really stress that the incidents that I use within Anna, none of them are based on my real cases. Yep. Because I was speaking to the Fantasy Hive about this, and I said, it would be like a gross violation to do that. I would never use one of my survivors' stories for my own personal gain. But what I have taken into Anna is we had a lot of input from a sexual abuse psychologist called Zoe Lodrick, whose work I absolutely adore. And she explains the process of fight and flight for sexual violence against women, because so often the questions are asked, well, why didn't they fight back? Why did they stay with the abuser? Why do they walk down the street holding their hand afterwards? And she explains how the amygdala side of the brain works, how it's it's the lizard side of our brain that it kicks in, and it's about self-preservation, and sometimes you just don't have any control over that.
Right.
So Anna's reactions in the novel are based on a lot of Zoe's work, and a lot of work that I've done with women through the years. Why do people stay with the perpetrators? And hopefully this will sort of shed a little bit of light on one victim and one victim's journey. So I can't be the arbitrator of how every victim will act in any sort of situation. Every survivor is different, but this is just a glimpse of what one person might do, and that I think is quite important as well, because I'm not saying that every victim will behave the way that Anna does.
No.
But a lot of her behaviors are typical of sexual violence survivors. So
and it's not like when a person meets their partner, they're immediately some sort of villain, twisting their mustaches, and it's a slow kind of gradual cycle of indoctrination and an apology, and then forgiving them, and then it happens again, and then it's kind of the threats and the isolation of the person, and threatening to expose secrets or stories, and it's shame and embarrassment, and it's just kind of a cycle that they use, a psychological warfare against the individual.
It is, and that's why I set it, because again, some people said, why haven't you gone for a contemporary England? And I said, well, this story could be set in a contemporary England. It really could. But it's just my personal choice to set it in a dystopia, because I also wanted communication methods to be cut off. I wanted her to be isolated, and for it to be the very extreme of feeling alone and not having anyone to talk to. And our abuser, he starts, as you've said, he captures her and claims her as his property, but he starts with the love bombing, and he believes he loves her. And then we have the violence, and, the sexual violence doesn't start until later in the book, because it's all about grinding your victim down. And it sounds very depressing and harrowing, but it's not. There is hope in this novel. And, that thread remains throughout the entire novel right to the conclusion. So it isn't just a grim dark read, that there is sort of more to it than that. So hopefully whoever picks it up and reads it will see these nuances that we're talking about, and take something from it.
Sorry, go on.
No, so I was going to say, so yes, it fitted this different box that Rebellion potentially were after, not a Hunger Games type dystopia, not something like the excellent Composite Creatures that's out with, I think that's Angry Robot as well, isn't it?
Caroline Hardacre,
so not something that focuses on the ecological side of things, not like Dark Lullaby, which I think is Titan, which is again on fertility and babies, but it focuses on one character. She is our world, and it's on the sexual violence, it's on the power, and it's on the control aspect. So it's got its place, clearly, and I don't think there's much else quite like it. So I think it's been quite difficult for people to sort of say, oh, I love this book because it reminds me of so and so. It's just a different sort of read.
I guess there's some comparisons people would probably draw between it and The Handmaid's Tale, because it's in a near future, but it's not contemporary. I mean, can you tell me a bit about the society that it's set in this sort of dystopia? How different is it to today and from The Handmaid's Tale?
Yeah, so it's not too far from today. It is a near future. There's been a world war because of lack of resources and foods. the world war has broken into different countries have banded together to attack neighboring countries for their resources. So, for example, North and South Korea have combined for the power to attack their neighbors. It's all about capitalism and greed, because the stock market is still going, but whoever controls the food and the resources controls the stock market. But it eventually just sort of plummets. The fossil fuels are running out, so fuel itself for cars and vehicles is expensive, therefore energy is expensive, therefore food production, and everything has slowly trickled to a still, and that's when we're calling it England. We've actually made it very generic as to where the location is set,
right.
So you can read it and you wouldn't know it's England, but that's to sort of help people visualize and put themselves in that situation. But you know, we had a wave of bombs that attacked hospitals and schools first, then military outposts, then power stations. So it was all very calculated to take out the countries quite quickly, and then carnage happened. The remaining towns that people wanted to remain, the towns where people wanted to remain sort of banded to become these outlaws, and they are a dog-eat-dog world. And then there are people who are wanderers like Anna, who basically take themselves away from civilization, who don't want to be a part of these gangs that rape and kill, that just want to be alone. And then we have the almost utopia towns that have set up with enforcers that the rich and the wealthy go to.
Right.
So, you know, Anna's alone, she gets captured, and she does make it to a utopia town. But of course, as is, you know, community and life that we live in, there's no such thing as a utopia. So the darkness that is in all the other towns is still there. It's just hiding. So then we sort of see that come to the surface, and then we deal with that as and when our antagonist returns. And then the story plays out. So I wanted to sort of show that, you know, we go from a state of nature in part one, also dystopia, sorry, so then to the utopia, and then to the nature of part three. So there are sort of, it moves along quite holistically into the different sort of themes. But yeah, that is the basic background to the world of Anna. It's very near future, I would say 10, 15 years from where we are now. But just resources are running out and people are killing each other.
I mean, are women second-class citizens in this world because she becomes someone's possession? Is that right?
Yeah. So it's not as overt as The Handmaid's Tale, where you know, women are chattel, but it's a case of the strong control, the physically strong control. So you can be a woman and you can be powerful, but Anna herself, her character, she's not an assertive woman. She's I'll call her like an every Jane, you know. She's just a normal person that hates violence, and she is an introvert and she's quite quiet, so of course she's fair game to Will. But we have enforcers that are almost like the new police / army that have set themselves up, and you have female enforcers, and we have Ben, who is a male version of Anna, but he gets used as a rent boy. So Will does explain during the novel, you know, that some women don't suit being chained, as some, you know, are okay to be out there and enforcing. So it is more power and control. If you're strong, then you can survive on your own, but if you're like Anna, then you won't. So right is might and all this sort of stuff. Might is right. So majority of women are treated badly because the women aren't as physically strong as the men, but there are exceptions to it. And I wanted that to be quite clear. I didn't want this to come across as misandry at all, or to the extremes of dystopia and The Handmaid's Tale, but it is a story predominantly on violence against women, although we have male victims within it as well.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Do you want to talk a little bit about sort of the editing? Because it'd be an interesting thing there again, because you worked, as you said, as a publisher, and then you've now taken the book to Rebellion. Yeah. How is the editing process?
Do you know, it's absolutely fantastic.
Okay.
It was really good. So, and I don't say this with any ego at all, the editing was really quite light. So they outsourced it to my editor. So Kate Coe worked on it in Rebellion, and then they outsourced it to Lauren Sills, who was fabulous. And they came back and she said it was very light, as you do, light copy editing throughout. And then we got to it to part 3, and she went, I don't think we need this chunk. And it was just an interaction I had with a character, whole new character introduced. I enjoyed that interaction with the character, but she was like, what does it really bring? And I was like, yeah, you're quite right, it doesn't really bring anything. Get it out of here. So we sort of just got rid of a chunk of narrative with the character, and we gender swapped 2 characters as well in the editing process. But it was, touch wood, it was quite a good process. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was quite nice having someone else's views on the book, and sort of you get a bit word blind yourself reading your own work over and over again.
Oh yeah.
And you just don't potentially see the pitfalls or the pacing issues or the gender swapping that could take place and be brilliant. And when they're sort of pointed out to you, you're like, oh my God, why didn't I think of that myself? So yeah, it was a really good process. And then it went to Paul Simpson for proofing. So it was quite nice having all these different people working on it and reading it, and just not having to worry about it myself. So yeah, it was a dream, to be honest with you. It sounds really perverse, and there'll be some people going, oh, I really hate editing, but I really enjoy it. So I structurally and developmental edit as well outside of Grimbold or anything myself, so I really like that process anyway from a learning point of view. So it was really good. Like I said, I've got nothing but good things to say about Rebellion, so it's really the fun part.
And also, someone asked a question, actually. I put a call for questions on Twitter, and someone said about the name Anna. Was there a particular reason you chose that name for the character, and of course then for the book? Was the book always called Anna?
So yeah, I've always called it. So back when it was on Autonomy, I didn't have a working title at all, and I just sort of took the character's first name as my working title and kept with it. So names are really important in Anna. The way, again, sort of trying to explain it and hopefully not sounding patronizing, is sort of names are our identity. It's how people know who we're speaking to. And Anna is not our main character's real name. It's the name that she gives Will when he captures her. He takes everything from her, but he can't take her name. So she gives him a false name. And the first thing that pops into her head is Anna, because the meaning of Anna is gracious, and she has to be gracious. She has to swallow her true self and be this character he wants her to be for her self-survival. And she repeats that to herself a lot, which is grated with a few reviewers, but she will say, Anna is gracious. I have to be Anna. I have to comply, because she has to remind herself that she is this person. She is this character she has created for Will. So her true self has to be buried deep within. So it was really important that I had a meaning of a name. And obviously I think, and I'd have to double check, but the meaning of Will is sort of a protector, a warrior, a guardian. And she finds that quite disconcerting, that the man who's captured her and beaten her, the meaning of his name isn't quite what it seems. I like Anna because it's palindrome.
Yeah, it was good.
And it's actually my favourite song is by Counting Crows, and it's Anna Begins. And the entire theme of that song is about a broken woman. So it everything seemed to fit in really nice to just keeping the book called Anna. And that's what I've done. So.
Well, it certainly makes it stand out, and there's always more to a title than people presume. They think, oh, yeah, well, it's one thing, and like, well, there again, you have to look for the nuance. You have to look beyond. You have to look beyond the surface of what's actually there. With a lot of these things.
And a little Easter egg for you, because I don't know how many people watch your stuff, but Anna changes her name when she escapes, and she changes her name to Kate or Catherine.
Mm-hmm.
And when he catches up with her, the perpetrator changes his name to Peter, because we've got Catherine and Peter from the Taming of the Shrew. So there's a certain line that he says to her, which is "Kiss me, Kate," and that's obviously from the 1960s version of Taming of the Shrew. So there was, I like playing with names. Names are something that I really enjoy, sort of bringing into my characters. So every character, their name has a meaning or a purpose to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would urge people to look up the meaning of the names of the people that I've chosen, and you might get a hint as to their character or their purpose within the novel.
What do your colleagues think about the book? Because normally I talk to people, authors, and friends and family, and they say, "Oh, I've written a book. Oh, that's nice," and this, that, and the other. But your colleagues are a little bit different, and the book is not just, "Oh, it's science fiction and spaceships and lasers." No, that sounds cool. Your book is a bit different. So what do they think of your book? Have they read it? Have some of them read it?
Yeah, they have. I work with a fabulous team of people. I couldn't ask for better colleagues. They are wonderful. But it is quite funny because most of them usually read crime and thrillers because I work it, and they can't.
You think it's too much close to real work. You think it'd be like, "Oh, that's that Busman's Holiday. I'll read a crime book."
That's exactly what I'm like. I'm like, oh God, no! I work this. I can't read it as well. I need escapism.
Yeah.
And some of my reviews are, this is so hard hitting that people have to take long pauses. They can't read it in one sitting. It's unsettling, it's dark. But I know that 4 people that I work with have all read it now, either print or audiobook.
Yeah.
And they all love it because it depicts what we do for a job. And they feel that it does it in a really good way. But also when I go, the bit when so-and-so does so-and-so, what did you think to that? And they go, oh yeah, that's fine, and you just realize how desensitized you can come to a lot of this stuff over, working with sexual violence day in and day out, how it doesn't affect you the way that perhaps it would affect members of the public that haven't dealt with this before.
Yeah.
So when you're getting it from one person's point of view, who's explaining every smell, every feeling, every touch, every taste, I guess it can be really overwhelming for people. Now, it's not graphic. I'm sure anybody would say I have not gone into titillation or anything like that. I've laid out what's going on, and for me, it's okay to read now. Because I've dealt with it for so long, but I know that it is quite hard for some people. But certainly in the office, they're all lovely. They're all incredibly proud. They all love what I've done. So yeah, it's a really nice feeling that people have done it. And I've only had positive, good things from friends and family that have read it as well. I think they're probably a bit scared of me. I think perhaps even if they hated it, they'd probably go, "Oh yes, Sam, I loved it." But yeah, so it's nice to know that people who work in my arena get what I'm trying to put onto the page and understand where I'm coming from. So yeah, it's a really nice feeling.
Yeah, you want readers to enjoy it, but you want certain people who either understand it more than the average person in the street, and if they appreciate it, that's always quite rewarding. And that's got to help with the imposter syndrome of if they read it and go,
for a really short period of time, and then you can't help it, but then you're like, oh well, they are my friends and family, so I'm going to say that it's good. So at the moment I'm still in that stage, and people will hit me around the head for it. I'm still in that stage of reading every single review that comes in. I know. That's
touching, get electric shot and touching it and touching it. Touching it.
It's like the mouse in Simpsons, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Out. I'll show you. Out. It's just.
I'm still doing it, and I will get to that stage where I'll learn just to read the good ones. But right now, I read everything. And on a good day, it's fine because I can read some of the less nice ones and think, okay, I get it wasn't for you, that's fine. And then I think I got one which was quite funny, which was saying it was all cops are bastards. I don't care if this is death to the author, 1 star. And those sort of ones like grate on me, because I'm like, you haven't really read the book. You've just seen what I do for the job. You don't like police. That's your prerogative. That's fine. But don't bother. Maybe.
Yeah. I like that Joe Abercrombie posts his 1-star reviews on Twitter and things and kind of revels in them. I think the best one I ever had is, "This is the worst book I've ever read." I was like, yes, 1 star, post that one.
And you just think, oh, you hated it that much to write a review about it. Therefore, I got an emotional response. Therefore, I win. So we can always twist them out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think, and I've had several, which is like, this was a snore fest. Okay, fine, thank you. But it is what it is. So at the moment, I like to read all the ones that come in so that I know whether or not I'm hitting the mark and the benchmark that I've set myself. And yeah, I've taken away from this that people actually want more of the world, which is good to know. So anything moving forward, I'll put more of the world and the history in. Right. But that does seem to be the only real gripe, is that people have said they want more of the world. So when I move on, well, I am writing another standalone book in this world. I've made a mental note to focus
more world
buildings, and that was quite interesting, because actually during the editing process, both Rebellion and I made the conscious decision to take out references of where Anna was set, to make it a generic nondescript place, and to scale back some of the world building, to focus more on her, because it is a novel. It was one of my friends actually who said, but Anna is the world, and that has stuck with me. She is our world. But it is interesting to see that people actually just still want more of the dystopia, which I understand, and that's absolutely fine. It's a learning point. As writers, we're always learning, we're always honing our craft. And I'm going to take that on board, and I'm going to put it in the next book. I'm going to explain more of the world and what's going on, and who controls who, and how X has happened and Y is now the new norm, and we'll take it from there.
I generally don't read reviews, and I don't kind of suggest people do, because I think it can be, I think it was Patrick Rothfuss that he said about his reviews. He said that you can have this huge pile of really good reviews, like a big bowl of cereal, and then you get one really bad review and it just sits on the top like a turd. And no matter what you do, you can't get around it. And so even if you get rid of it, then you get another bad review. It's just going to spoil everything. So I don't read reviews. I mean, like I read the trade ones when they were sent to me for the new book, but generally I just think it's that thing of touching a live wire.
And you are absolutely 100% right. And Hannah from Rebellion on tweets, she'll often put in the capitals, "Stop reading reviews." I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm like this, I'm like a little mouse in the cage. I can't help it. I'm touching the cheese and I'm getting electric shocks. One day I will learn, but I'm incredibly stubborn, as everyone will tell you. So it probably won't be
me too.
Anytime in the near future. But yeah, it's been so far. I mean, it came out the end of May. It's been a great sort of 5-6 weeks of seeing how people have reacted to it. And I think I'm getting to the stage where I can just breathe a little bit easier now and sort of let it do its stuff and see how it's
out there now. The books are out there. You can't do anything about it. How people interpret it, how they react to it, we have to kind of let go at that point. That's the kind of
and that's what Kate said. She said, it's not your book anymore.
It's difficult. It's so difficult.
It's not your book now, Sam. It's out there. It's for the readers. It's their book when they read it. And I'm like, yeah, but, and she's like, no, it's not your book. And I'm like, you're right. I know you're right. So yeah, that's it. I will stop reading the reviews. I might set myself a little thing, sort of say, well, maybe tomorrow. I might maybe tomorrow I won't read anymore. But yeah, we'll see.
It's tough. It is tough, not because you want to get feedback and you want to know what people think about it. But yeah, some people write reviews just for themselves. Some people write reviews for their followers, and some people just write them because they want to be mean. So, you can't win them at that point. It's too late. The book's out. I mean, I've had someone emailed me once and said, "Oh, could you change this and could you change that?" I'm like, "Well, the book's out, so no, I can't actually change. It's too late. You're a year too late."
Yeah. Oh, talking about emails, just very quickly, I had a random email come through. This ranty one from obviously like a set-up troll account, accusing me of being a man. This is the most. This is misogynistic. I don't think you know what misogynistic means, but okay. You know, this is perverse. You must be sick in the head and all sorts. I'm taking that as a little badge of honor that somebody has taken their time to create this false email address, send me a barrage of hate for a novel, completely missed the point. In fact, they and somebody else said it's as misogynistic as The Handmaid's Tale.
Okay. Well done for not getting any of the book or the film.
Yeah. So, you know, it's I've been there as well, and I've got this email and I'm like, fabulous. So I'm keeping that stays in my inbox as a little bit of cheer me up when I'm feeling a bit down. But yeah, you can't, like you say, you can't dictate what a reader will and won't take away from your novel. People wanted this to be a love story. I could tell that with some of my reviews that
interesting.
They wanted this to be an enemies to lovers style love story, and you know, it's never going to be that in a million years. So I think some of the people who picked it up this wasn't their preferred story tale and sort of genre, which is absolutely fine. That side of things, you know, I understand that. If you want to read romance, you'd read romance, and this would have been a massive slap to the face, proverbial. But it is quite interesting sort of seeing what people have taken from it, and it does, I mean, I get what you say about not reading reviews, but it does help me now know where to hone the next part of this tale, and what to focus on. So
what is next? What do you work? So you said a new book and set in the same world. What can you say about it, or not?
My not too subtle sort of next book. So it is another standalone in this world. Okay. And it's tentatively called Emma. Funny that, another female. But we're following a character in one of those cruel towns I was talking about. She's a bar owner, standing on her own 2 feet. In my dystopia, if you are physically weak and infirm or have a disability, you are culled, because there are no hospitals or medicines or people that are prepared to care for you. So she's hiding her father who's got dementia and her brother who has epilepsy, whilst trying to run this bar and basically show to the world that she's a strong person. Some of my characters from book 1 come back in, which I won't spoil too much, but I've got drugs trafficking going on, human trafficking, some murder, a bit of revenge, a whodunit, a bit of romance, a suicide. We're kind of covering a lot
of bases covered there.
Yeah. And sort of trying to sort of take working on the PTSD and working on the mental health aspect of this novel and what happens, and revenge and bereavement are going to be the 2 key themes of this, and how people cope with loss. And you know, there are, as we know, there's 101 different facets of a human emotion, and how some people grieve is perhaps not how others do. So we're going to focus along those lines, but I'm going to have more world building. Okay. So that's the important thing. And then it's got a big old twist, as they all do. But I'm only about 20,000 words into it at the moment, because trying to find time to write is nigh on impossible. And also, like I said, being so soft, when I get a crappy review, I'm then like, I can't possibly write. So I then go on sitting there eating bonbons on the sofa for 2 weeks until I feel that I can possibly open the laptop again. Very theatrical.
Get your chaise longues and you can lie on it.
And that's pretty much it. So I need to get a bit of a backbone. I don't want to use the phrase man up, but you know, I need to kind of get a bit of a backbone and just become a little bit more steeled towards these reviews and crack on and write a bit more. And then there will be one final book in the series, which is Tess, another girl, and which will show another side to the female sort of population in this world. And I kind of view it as a bit of a dystopia one day. So from Debbie Nichols' book One Day. Right. So it's a sapphic love story, that one. So that one will sort of tie into the other two books as well. I've already introduced the characters in book one, but you won't necessarily link them to book three until it's written. So I've got a plan, but how long that'll take me, I don't know. To be honest with you, I mean, it took Anna 7 years to get out there. I'm hoping this one won't take quite so long.
But it did sit for a while. It wasn't you weren't trying for 7 years.
It did sit for a very long period of time, yeah. So hopefully I can, get some time and a bit of a backbone and sit down and write a little bit more. Yeah.
It sounds good. I'll put links down below for everybody to link to all your social media and everything and website and stuff, and they can check out Anna, which is out now from Rebellion. And thanks for coming and talking to me tonight about all this, and for keeping the camera so steady whilst you're.
I've literally got two hands on it at the moment, because every time I move
like really well.
It starts rocking like a boat. But no, it's been really good. Thank you so much. It's been brilliant. So
bye everyone.
See you. Bye.